Good afternoon. I'd like to start off by asking a question, if not now, when? When the Ten Commandments said, "Thou shalt not kill," my question is, does that apply to just individuals or government? I am an opponent of the death penalty. I'm an opponent of the death penalty laws in America, and not just in America, but around the world. But I also believe that right here in America, the government needs to put an end to its racist laws. My intent is to move you to think about this issue, but not just to think about this issue, but to think and act. Issues related to the death penalty have been debated for centuries, and quite honestly, by now, everyone has an opinion on the subject. The death penalty was brought to America by colonial masters in the 17th century, the 1600s. It was utilized to instill fear and control over the black slaves. In 1972, the United States Supreme Court declared the law arbitrary, and there was a moratorium imposed on the death penalty from 1972 up until 1976. The first execution to take place in America after 1976 took place in Utah in 1977, when Gary Gilmore was executed by firing squad. However, in the court case Gregg versus Georgia, the United States Supreme Court ruled that the 50 states in America had met the standards required to impose the death penalty in all 50 states in America. The youngest person to be executed in America was 14-year-old George Steinme, 14 years old. He was executed for allegedly killing 2 white girls. He was coerced and promised ice cream if he testified. No evidence was submitted in court, except for the sheriff's statements. His defense attorney was a tax attorney. Ask yourself, how did a 14-year-old get executed for allegedly killing 2 white girls, and the 17-year-old who did the killings with John Muhammad in the DC sniper killings did not get the execution, did not get executed? Why? Our most recent heated debate on the death penalty deals with the issue of Troy Davis, executed right here in Georgia, even after witnesses who testified during his trial recanted on their testimony. Today, according to the Death Penalty Information Center, there are currently 3,260 people currently on death row. Almost all are men, 3,175. 2% of women, 55. 30 inmates were executed last year in America, and over 40 the year prior to. I am often asked whether I'll still be in opposition to the death penalty had it been my child who got murdered. And my answer is always, what if it's your child who murdered my child? Would you still want the death penalty for your child? Desmond Tutu once said, to take a life when a life has been lost is not justice, but revenge. My question is, how do you humanely execute somebody? How do you humanely execute somebody? Do you inject them? Is that humane? Think about that issue. Ask yourself, does government believe in God? We live in a country where the doctrine is separation of church and state. Does government believe in God? Supporters argue that the death penalty is the most powerful deterrent used to prevent crime, and it's cheaper. In a nationwide poll, a group of selected police chiefs were asked the question as to how effective the death penalty was as a crime-fighting tool. A strong majority responded and said they do not believe it's an effective tool. Additionally, the chiefs ranked the death capital punishment as less cost-effective than other methods available to them. And they do not believe that just simply the threat of the death penalty deters people from committing crimes, nor does the death penalty prevent future crimes. Furthermore, there is no evidence to suggest that executing people deters, again, future murders. Also, while on the subject, it might seem reasonable to assume that executing a person is much cheaper than imprisoning them for life. That assumption is wrong. In the most comprehensive study conducted on the subject, it was found that the death penalty cost $2 million over the cost of a non-death penalty case with a life sentence. How can this be, you may ask? Well, to begin with, it should be noted that in the cost of the death penalty, it also includes the added expenses of appeals, the added additional required procedures, and a drag on the system of appeals that takes anywhere from 13 to 20 years, the average time spent on death row. When confronted with facts, figures, and statistics, supporters of the death penalty argue that they don't care how many millions it costs as long as you execute those people who have committed crimes in our society. But my question is, in this time of economic uncertainty, with our limited resources, why should we cut benefits to elderly people and kids and needy families just to continue on executing people at such a cost? Minorities, especially black people, are disproportionately awarded the death penalty in comparison to their white counterparts and in comparison to the crimes committed. Although blacks make up only 10% of the United States population, blacks make up 50% of inmates on death row. How is that? In 82% of studies conducted, race was found to influence the likelihood of being charged with capital murder or receiving the death penalty. Those who murder white people are 3 times more likely to receive the death penalty than those who murder blacks. Basically, the current system is telling us that a white life is more valuable than that of a black life. My question is, if that is so, where did we go wrong in America? When? Was it in 1972? Was it in 1607? Where did we go wrong? What did the Supreme Court know that they felt it necessary to suspend the death penalty in 1972? And another question is, if you do believe that the death penalty is necessary, what happened in America between the years 1972 and 1976? Did we have a rise of violent crimes in America? No, we didn't. And the truth is, the death penalty is not a deterrent. Furthermore, countries with the death penalty laws, have a higher crime rate than countries without the laws. I believe in justice, not just punishment. I'm not saying we should release criminals from prison and let them out into society. I believe everybody should be held accountable for their actions. What I am advocating is for alternatives to the death penalty. Alternatives that are more in line with our truest beliefs and values, and the values of America. In a speech given on her late husband's anniversary, Coretta Scott King said, "I believe the death penalty is unchristian, un-American, and unconstitutional. She said, there is overwhelming statistical evidence that suggests that the death penalty in its application is racist. She said, as one whose husband and mother have died the victim of murder assassinations, she stands firmly in opposition to the death penalty for those convicted of capital punishment offenses. She said, an evil deed is not redeemed by an evil deed. Justice is never upheld by a legalized murder. She said, allowing the state to execute its citizens sets a dehumanizing examples of brutality that only encourages violence. She said, the government displays a very sadistic precedent that is unworthy of a civilized society. If we are to think that we are a civilized nation, shouldn't our laws reflect our thinking of a civilized country? I share in the opinion that the only purpose of the death penalty is vengeance, pure and simplistic vengeance. I will end with a personal story. It's a story of a high school friend who stabbed and killed my friend in high school. The first killing to happen at our school. And this has been some 15 years later. Ask yourself, should they have executed him too at age 14? Today, he's 32. His profile picture on Facebook is that of him graduating from college in his cap and gown. The question is, do we believe in redemption? Do we believe that humans are capable of redeeming themselves? A core value of Christianity. Marcus Garvey once said, what we do today inspires others to act in the future. So join me and let's fight to end such a draconian law in America and put an end to this racist tool used against blacks and minorities. Thank you.